I've got 6:32. I will go ahead and call us to order.
Hapler.
Here.
Carney.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Next up on the agenda, we have approval of minutes. We're going to go ahead and table this till next meeting since you and I weren't here and you don't get to vote on it by yourself because you can't second your own motion.
Yes.
So moving along here, communication from zoning, Ms. Burrell.
Yeah, so I just want to provide an update on some things we have going on here in the village. So our consultants hard at work on the Uptown plan. They're taking all the information that was compiled from our previous stakeholder meeting, our steering committee meetings, and we have a little vision section that we mapped some potential projects. So they're going to go into a charrette next week with their team and then work on, putting together some potential projects within that plan. And then we're looking to convene another steering committee meeting, probably sometime in July, but I don't have a date set right now. The branding effort is underway as well. The marketing and communications committee is serving as the steering committee for the project. They're going to meet on a call with us on June 22nd to review some of the things that the consultants put together then. Some exciting things here within our staff. We did hire a zoning inspector, so Justin started on Monday. We're working on getting him trained, and you'll probably see him around some meetings. Other than that, that's all I have tonight.
You didn't want to make him work late on his first week.
Yeah, I told him he didn't have to be here tonight, but be prepared to be introduced to council in a couple weeks.
Perfect.
Give him a little bit of a break.
Do we have any BZA updates? I know Tom's not here.
BZA is not going to be meeting this month.
Okay. Mayor Carney.
And I wanted to also say that Mr. Dreyer was on planning and zoning. If you remember him,
okay.
yes,
Yeah.
so he is the zoning inspector. Yes,
Oh, perfect.
So
okay.
we're a little familiar with him already. Yeah. Since our last meeting, and unfortunately I wasn't able to be here that month for May, but we finalized our administrator search and want to introduce Ms. Haley Lupton as our administrator for the village. She has served as interim the past 6 months and has done a wonderful job. And the committee brought forth the top two, and council made that final decision. So that was great to have that wrapped up in May. And then also what I've been working on is just more community outreach, helping. We have a lot of interested new businesses, but trying to find them space and the right space to work. So working with Ms. Brill as well on that. Also, we have working with Pleasant Valley Fire District and the Plain City Police and Plain City Elementary School for Safety Town coming up in 2 weeks. So that has been a lot of time here the last few weeks.
We'll be there.
Yes.
Perfect. Moving right along, for new business, we do have application to MS 22-1 major site plan at 305 West Main Street with the Plain City Library. Do we have the applicant here, I'm assuming?
Yeah. I'm Alina Springer. Is that okay? So I am with WSA, the architecture firm that's been working with the library. Just a little background. This is for a preliminary site plan development. It's an addition to the existing library, and it's to provide more resources for the community, including laser cutter access, woodworking, 3D printers, an additional drive-through window to provide more accessibility for the community, and then a community room that will be able to access the front lawn. Okay, so this first map here is just to kind of familiarize yourself with where the library is located. It's right along West Main Street, and it backs up to Bigelow Avenue. Okay, and then this green boundary is also that location, so it includes 3 property parcels, and then it is also adjacent to a residential lot. Okay. The next slide is more of like the enlarged version of the survey that we have received. So if we go ahead to that one, One of the big topics of discussion today is that kind of pink area that we're showing. And then the blue boundary is the overall property boundary for what the library does own. The pink area that we're seeing there is kind of this expansive gravel drive and a lot kind of included in there. The majority of this drive is within the library's property. So what we will be proposing is a new paved alley, which is within the library's property, and this will provide access to that drive-through window that we'll kind of get to as we move along. And then this plan is just kind of provided to show where that footprint of the proposed addition is. So you can kind of see it in that peach color. It connects the existing library to the existing garage and kind of provides more of an access between those spaces while also utilizing that lawn that is there now. And the next couple of slides, there's like 3 of them, kind of include some context images of what the site looks like right now and the adjacent properties. This one is the proposed site plan. So on the left side there, you can see that proposed paved alley, which would be a one-way alley. So you would be entering it off of Main Street, heading towards Bigelow Avenue. And along that alley, we would propose some speed bumps just to make sure it is not like a main passageway. It's meant mostly for access to that drive-through window, but there is an opportunity to kind of pull off and get to the drive-through window so that the alley kind of remains a bit uninterrupted. Yep. So this one is just kind of showing where the 3 different properties are within what the library does own. So you can kind of see the 3 lots and how that addition would actually span almost all 3 of the lots to connect that library with the existing garage. But these properties are all owned by the library, so it seems as though this would be fine and kind of utilizes the space that we have. Okay, and then this is where that gravel drive is currently. We're kind of looking from like a Google Street View. We have a power pole on your left there, and then this kind of pavement that stops and continues as though it's gravel to the back alley. And through here, the top drawing is kind of what that existing condition is. It doesn't really provide good accessible crosswalks in that space, and a portion of the alley does cross the property line. So the bottom image is what we're proposing for what the new curb cuts would be, and we would be providing tactical surface where the crosswalk is. That way there's more of a safety accounted for people crossing through that one-way drive. We would also be proposing a new sign right along that drive aisle. It's like dimension there. I think it says 2 foot. You kind of see it within the property line. And that would be kind of the proposal for what that sign is, just to kind of create more awareness to the new drive-through window that they will be providing, and also to link to their existing logo. Okay, and then this is a view from Bigelow Avenue looking towards West Main Street. So what we're seeing here is that gravel drive that also expands into like a wide expansive lot. So on the next sheet, we kind of see that top view similar to what we were showing before is what that existing condition is. The orange in that view is where that proposed paved drive aisle, including the curbs, would be. So it kind of creates more of a straight path for someone coming from West Main Street to Bigelow, but also creates more separation towards where the gravel area would be. And then we've included some of the drawings just to provide more reference for what the space will be looking like inside. So on the top left corner is that community room. And there would be garage doors, which provide opportunity for community events that are happening within that room to kind of expand out into the lawn. And then pretty much where the existing garage is, up from there are the maker spaces, which is where the laser cutters, 3D printers, resources for the community to kind of work with their hands in. And then on the bottom left is where that drive-through window is. And this is just further reference of what those spaces would look like on the interior. And then we have already gone to the design review board last month, and we have received a certificate of appropriateness. So these are some of the drawings that we had shared with them in the previous discussion. So you're kind of seeing the existing library, which is represented by this like deep burgundy red brick. And then you're seeing kind of the white, more mute building is the addition. It's a bit more set back. So these elevations are not something that I would actually see, but just for reference. Okay. And then these just provide a more zoomed in view of the spaces and the materials that we had reviewed with the design review board. And then there's two renders here. This one is from that alley kind of looking towards West Main Street. It is a little outdated because it doesn't show that the pull-off area like we have in the site plan now, but just for reference. And same with the next one is kind of that back area, which shows kind of that new paved alley and also where the graveled space would be, which we're hoping to kind of utilize as a maker's yard. So on that sidewall, which we've discussed with the design review board, some sort of graphic to kind of activate that space. That way people who are working inside of the addition can kind of come out and continue working outside. And that's it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would just say initially, I like the idea. I think it's a lot of things that are very much needed in the community. I mean, how many times have we sat in here and talked about how we want to find more community resources, right, and more opportunities to engage people and provide those kind of things. And you know, I appreciate the renderings. I think it's very well thought out. From my perspective, I think the only call outs that I had were the ones that Ms. Brill called out just in her notes as well regarding you know, coordinating with the properties next door, right, because you are encroaching into that space. Has there been communication with them? I'm assuming there has at this point.
There hasn't been like direct communication with it, but this has been kind of announced publicly, so they do know of it.
I contacted the one property owner that owns the property on Main Street
Okay.
and told them about the proposal, asked if, you know, it would be something that they'd be interested in opening up a discussion for on coordinating the effort to improve that. It functions as an alley, but it's not technically an alley because it's owned by private property owners, and he seemed receptive to the discussion.
Good. Yeah, and then I think the other call out that you made as well, and I think it's the maker's yard is what it was in reference to, right? That if it is to be gravel, then the preference for the village is that it's not used for parking, right? Or for driving on. And I mean, that's pretty standard with anything that we've had come before us. So, you know, something that I think we need to consider and probably talk through a little bit. I mean, looking at this rendering, it seems like it would be kind of difficult to use that as overflow parking since you've got some structures there for seating and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Just going back on that, I believe the one site plan provided some, yeah, on this, like they were proposing some overflow parking spaces here, but it doesn't look like it's showing on this space, but.
So there's no additional parking spaces than what's currently there?
No, based on the parking spaces that are already there, it already meets and exceeds what the square footage needed, so it wasn't necessary to add any additional ones.
Yeah, I mean, if we've met that requirement, I would almost rather it just not be considered for parking, right? And I think that makes the conversation a lot easier there as well.
It'd be a lot cleaner in that back area.
Yeah.
From what we've already currently using and assessing that, like when you're leaving, because usually if I park in the back lot and I'm leaving, I don't even think to go down that gravel alleyway. I go down to Fringe Street to exit or.
I'll be honest, I mean, lived here my whole life, I just assumed that was part of the property next door.
I would say,
Which is why I've never gone down that route.
Like I said, like you said, that would be really just the main concern would be with the property owners next door. Basically, you've never had any traffic going through there, now making it a drop off. But if they're applicable to it, I mean, I know it's basically mostly all the library property anyways to deal with it, but.
I think that's pretty well shielded by some trees along that side of it as well, isn't it? Or at least on part of that drive.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
some larger trees that are around.
If the house uses that for parking, if you get past those trees, there's like a small.
They also have access on the other side of the house to get back there as well. That property owner on Main Street said that his tenants do use this alley, which is why I talked about there may be some coordination that needs to be done, so that those tenants still have access.
Yeah, I would say procedurally, there just needs to be a shared use agreement. I think that's the way you solve it, is a shared use agreement between the library and that. If it's a set apartments, shared use agreement that's legally recorded covers that.
Anything with the utility pole, is that, I mean, just with the drive there, if it's going to get, is it going to kind of get expanded out a little bit? I'm just looking at the picture, kind of like where that, it's chunked up on that.
Yeah,
I think the one drawing
there's.
showed it as well in a little closer detail.
Yeah, I mean,
It's close, but based on what our survey is showing, dimensionally, the utility pole is fine where it is, and we can still provide accessible curb cuts to get into the alley.
Okay.
Yeah, at the bottom drawing.
yeah, I can see where, yeah, it's,
But it is shifting that existing curb
Yes,
curb
we're
cut a little bit
moving it
further.
more into our property line.
If it's curved, if you've got the curb on there, that doesn't concern me. If it was flush with pavement, then I would have a little more concern.
I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to hit it anyways, right?
And he gets to do it.
Yep.
I do like the overall design of the new space, and it's exciting to see in the expansion of our library facilities, and I appreciate the Dropbox location for someone who has had young kids to get out and drop off and return books. And so would that take away the Dropbox in the back of the library, or is just an additional?
It's an addition.
Okay.
So the Dropboxes at the back of the library would remain because of the pickup lockers.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure that there was ample opportunity, and that's a lot of the feedback that we got, especially during the pandemic with the curbside service. This would be replacing the curbside service.
Okay.
Was from parents of young children, and individuals with accessibility issues that just really enjoy not having to have a car.
Mhm.
So it would be an addition, not a addition.
so I guess it's more curiosity. So it would pick up as well as drop off, or is it just going to be drop off?
It would be pickup as well during limited hours.
Okay.
We are working on a plan to staff the addition with our current staffing levels. And it's been a plan that's been in the work for a long time. So the window would actually close a little earlier than the rest of the facility would. That would also cut down on sort of later traffic, library traffic coming through the alleys, so it wouldn't be as much of an issue. But while the window is open, pickups can happen at the window too. Pretty much anything that can happen in an express fashion, because we don't want to back up of cars.
Yeah.
But yes, pickups can happen.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Other questions, concerns?
Just pay attention to stormwater.
Okay. Yes, we do have a civil engineer on here, so.
Perfect, and I think we're looking for approval tonight, right, on the preliminary plan, right? So I would make a motion to approve, pending resolution of the comments that we had from staff.
Second?
Mr. Adler,
Yes,
Mayor Carney,
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
You don't have to stay if you don't want to. We can take a minute and let you guys sprint out the door.
Well, I want to thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you at the library.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, I know somebody back that I brought was excited that when I told him, I said, there should be library expansion.
Yeah.
I won't embarrass you.
Other business, we had planning commission consideration for adding professional office as permitted use in the RU rural district and setting a public hearing for July 20th. I think I missed some of the background here. I read through the meeting minutes, but I know they don't always do us justice.
Yeah, so I can provide a little bit more context. We had Mr. Joe Kraft attend the last meeting and informally kind of discuss. He recently bought the old farmhouse that kind of sits near the Derby Station property in Sheridan Farms, off of 161.
Okay.
I can pull it up on the map if you.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture it.
Right, so when you're coming into town, right before you get to the creek where all the cows are, there's that, the farmhouse that kind of sits up.
Okay, next to the Scheidler property there.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
east side of it.
That brick home, he recently purchased it, and his goal with that in at least the immediate future is to make that his own personal office space, so he can free up tenant space out, about where the pharmacy is. In the rural district, a office space is not a permitted use.
Is that currently in the village limits?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
currently,
I'm
it's
surprised.
currently in the limits, it's zoned in the rural district.
Okay.
It was, I believe, being used as a single-family residential structure, which is a permitted use in the
If you
rural
look on the
district.
map, it's a little
It's
green
just a
spot
little-
right there.
Yeah.
So he discussed with, and we discussed with the commission opportunities in order to allow him to operate that use there. He conveyed that there were no plans to change the exterior of that building, so it's gonna remain looking the same as it currently is right now. He just was looking to add that office space as a use. I can't issue him a certificate of zoning compliance with its zoning use in that district. We discussed potentially rezoning that property, pros and cons to that. And I think the commission ultimately, we discussed down to just adding a use in that district to allow for professional offices when it does, and if we do pass the new code as it's written, it'll get zoned in the agricultural district, and professional office space would be a permitted use in that district. So it's just, in the meantime, how to establish that use, but we have to go through the formal process.
Okay. Yeah, and that, you answered my next question, which was, how does that fit in the future plans?
But, and if you think about it, up 42, you have Ohio Cattlemen, so that would fit in, and so there's a big, I think, draw, and plus I'm taking a lot of calls about needing office space. People are wanting to bring their business here, but there's just literally no place for them to go.
And like Taylor said, like we found out like the permitted use on the new zoning code, it would be permitted. It's just under the current, the agricultural one, just the office use wasn't listed. So it's like, but the new agricultural one it is. So
Yep.
it's just,
So we need a motion to set,
Yes, just to set that public hearing
Oh.
for the our next.
and I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr.
oh, no,
Harriman.
no, I just, yeah, so.
Makes sense.
I moved to set the public hearing for the consideration for adding professional office as permitted use in the rural district for July 20th.
Second?
Mr. Adler,
Yes.
Mayor Carney,
Yes.
Mr. Herron.
Yes.
And then last on the agenda here, zoning code update / discussion.
Yeah, so I can give some update. I know we're a couple members short, but we did take all of the comments that we received from planning commission and from council. I met with the consultant and we think that we have made some progress in terms of addressing some of those concerns with variety of housing types, lot sizes, and ultimately ultimately where we landed on, at least on that big, was we added a new district. In the code, it's called village residential, and I can pull up a little screenshot of what that looks like. Give me one moment. But, so that was, and like I said, in the effort to address the concerns that we had with the suburban residential district and lot size and everything like that. We still kept the suburban residential district, and you should have a zoning map in front of you to show what stays in the suburban residential district, which would be the Copperfield development, the meadows, things like that. Those are a little bit larger of lots, they're mostly single family homes. The village residential district would best fit some of our newer development. It doesn't perfectly fit anything, but the goal with this is to bring in some of those more form-based principles. And it talks about things like including a mix of residential village character, complementing the current village development patterns, accommodate a variety of housing types, alleviate the perceived impact of high density developments, more pedestrian walkability and movement, use scale, building orientation, and landscaping to establish community identity, use open space and recreation space as, community focal point, so on and so forth. And with that, so each district kind of has, we talk about lot size, form, and give a little picture. In this district, what we went for is Mr. Littleton, he drew on the map like a cross section, like if you were to cut a community in half, what does it look like on the inner rings as you kind of go out where it's more dense and it builds out? In this district, the idea was to allow various different lot sizes within the same district. So you can have larger lots, suburban, your rural lots where they are maybe a half acre. Suburban lots where maybe they do have a minimum of 8,000 square feet or more, like we see in Copperfield, where some of those lots are 10,000 square feet. And then you can still get the traditional neighborhood lots, which just follows current suburban development patterns in our current development that we're seeing with, the smaller lots, like 6,000 square feet and so forth. Plus, it also provides, the multi-unit dwellings and what those lot sizes and requirements are. Gives frontage requirements, setback requirements based on the lot that they're using, all of those things that we've had in the previous thing. And then, probably most notably, we talked about, okay, we don't want all lots all the same size. So that bottom says it's a lot type mix and it's maximum. So based on the number of homes in a development, a certain percentage of those could follow within each of those lot sizes. So let's say you build, just for easy math, 100 homes. 30 of those could be a minimum of 6,000 square feet. The rest you'd have to mix a different form in order to accommodate that mix that we've discussed. There is a caveat in it, so this wouldn't apply to every single property that were to ever be developed, because obviously if you have a 2-acre lot, you're not gonna be able to do a percent mix like this. You're not gonna get that many homes. So there is kind of an asterisk in there that the minimum development size for this district shall be 10 acres. So, doesn't apply to, like I said, everything, and like I discussed on some of the current development, it doesn't fit it perfectly. We don't always see that mix, but the form kind of falls into some of these a little bit better, in terms of they don't meet all of the requirements for a suburban residential district, therefore there would be more non-conformities if you zoned it in that district. But the idea would be, as new development comes in, it provides another residential classification that it can be annexed in based on where its context is in the village and what development character it should have. Whether it should have a mix of lot types, it should be, more rural in character, it should be more suburban in character. This just adds, like I said, more of that form-based principle and addresses some of the concerns that we're having with current development, all being 50-foot lots.
It's good. I like the idea. I like the concept. I think it is good progress in terms of a lot of the discussion we've had to encourage some diversity in the mix of structures that we get. So I also like the concept of adding it as a new classification, right? So that we still get some of those that are the larger lot sizes that I know we've had a lot of discussion that are, would be the preference. somewhat related but unrelated call out. One of the other districts still shows for the height 40-foot min,
Okay,
and it irks me every time I look at it.
sorry. Which one? I'll go back.
It
I'll look at
is,
Oh, is it right there?
no, it's,
Is it the rural? district?
rural, yeah. Structure height 40-foot men. Because I saw it the one time, now every time I open this up, like my eyes go right to that.
I want to make sure.
I don't know how you feel about 40-foot men as the building requirements.
They're getting a new ladder truck this year.
Get the new truck going there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a,
Sorry,
I was just going through, going down the traditional neighborhood, so what, the next or second one, I guess there. The 2,100 square foot min, I thought we had that, talked about that being bigger, but, because I know, I mean, when you go to the village residential mix, we have like the traditional neighborhood is a 6,000 square foot lot, but like when you go up to the traditional neighborhood, there it's a 2,000 square foot lot.
I thought what we talked about with that was that that's targeted more towards like your uptown area where it's the
Yeah.
smaller lots closer together, kind of to encourage some density, because that's what it looks like on here as well.
Yeah, and if it helps to just call it something different in the village residential, so it's not traditional neighborhood lots and people get confused, we can rename that into something that makes a little bit more sense, if that helps provide clarification. But yes, the traditional neighborhood district is that the homes that are built and surrounded uptown, they are just more dense, the lots are smaller.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think maybe changing it from traditional
okay.
Yeah.
might sound better.
So really your concern is not with this section, but really with below, how it's just disconnected in terms of.
I think so, yeah.
requirements.
I think just clarifying,
'Cause I mean, I can't imagine we're gonna see a whole lot of new traditional neighborhood districts coming to us,
No.
especially with the way this map is laid out. Like,
Right,
we don't really
yeah.
have a whole lot of opportunity to connect those to the existing, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, one of our best practices we've talked about is don't have island zoning, right? Like, don't just plop one down out in the middle of nowhere because somebody wants it.
yeah. And I don't know if we just call that, since it's, you know, if we make it like an uptown neighborhood district, since that's basically what it
Oh,
refers
that's a good
to.
idea.
It's a good call out. I was thinking of going the other way. Change the other way. That makes way more sense. Yeah, and that, I feel like that would probably make it a little bit easier to understand too, as, you know, people are coming to us that, hey, this is targeted for the uptown.
Right, yeah,
Area.
because you see a traditional neighborhood, people are gonna think like
Yeah, let me
the
put this
majority
there.
of the town, like, you know, here in the meadows
Mhm.
or,
Like our area,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's like your
yeah,
traditional
going up like
neighborhood.
Lantern through,
Yeah.
you know, those neighborhoods or, any other big changes through, I kind of breezed through it, I didn't have a lot of time this past week to really dive into it.
No real big changes, again, the comprehensive table changed to add that new district, but none of the uses really changed. I did take a really hard look at the sign code, I know you had some questions about maximum sign heights, that
Mhm.
was reduced. The maximum sign height for like a ground sign or something along those lines, for a single use is now 11 feet.
Okay.
If it's, you know, a multi-tenant sign, then you go up to 15, instead of 25.
I think 25 is what it was.
Was a concern, so we lowered that
Okay.
a bit and measured, like, used the best cases for things that we've seen in town, and that seems to be about where things are fitting in.
Okay.
So that was reduced. Again, not a huge significant change, but, that was a change in the sign code, in that.
Was there any additional feedback that people gave on the live document that you sent the link for?
I just pulled it up today and there were no comments.
Okay.
So,
I do have a question on, like, if it was added, we had talked about the topsoil going back in.
So I just was looking today, and Randy and I actually met about subdivision regulations. There is a provision and call out in there that talks about, I don't know specifically what it says, but it leaves the discretion up to the site per the construction standards and the discretion of the it's written in there, it doesn't specifically say they must add X amount of topsoil, because I don't think in every case, maybe that amount makes sense. Some cases they can need more topsoil than others, so I think leaving it up to the professionals to sort of make that call is maybe the best way to address something like that. And we're still working on going through revisions of subdivision regs. It's not something we've presented right now. We just want to make sure those are all buttoned up, and they reference a lot of engineering standards that it bogs it down, and the code is dense enough as well. I didn't want it all to get muddled and confused. So once that's presented and we think we've got a nice pretty bow on it, then we will bring that forward, and hopefully they do relate, but it's kind of a separate title within the zoning ordinance, so we can look at that separately.
And I know Mr. Jackson kind of brought up, at the last meeting, talking like with the utilities, with like boxes being, front yard, rear yards.
Again, something that's addressed in the subdivision regulations. Right now, we had it written in there that they are all to be wherever possible buried underground.
Okay.
It's in the subdivision regs, so that's where we'll cover it, and I'll make those call outs when we do present that forward, like where that's written in there. But yes, the document's fresh in my mind because I was just going through it today, but the goal is to move everybody towards burying it underground.
Wish they could come back and move mine underground.
Yeah.
Big old green box in the middle of the front yard.
You're still gonna have that. All your utilities are underground, but you'll still have your boxes.
Not in the front yard though, I hope.
Well, maybe we get them in the side yard or the backyard.
Well, currently we have a backyard where possible.
I believe so.
But yours,
We made that change a couple years ago. Well, mine was built in '98 as well. We changed it like 2 years ago.
I think, Mr. Jackson, ours are in the backyard. That's where because him and I were kind of talking. Because we're like, we noticed like our neighborhood is backyard, but the neighborhood over, it's all front yard.
honestly, it's wherever
They just threw
the
them.
utility company, unless there's specific regs, it's wherever the utility company can get them in the cheapest and get them put in.
Well, I think that's why we wanted to put that right.
And I would say that's the thing is let's make sure we get it cleaned up right and go, hey, this is how we want it to look. So that way they just can't go, well, because we know everybody's gonna do the cheapest way
Right.
possible, so.
You just have to, there are challenges in the further out you get along tree lines, you get along wooded areas. Are you gonna force them to go back through the woods? Now you're cutting down a swath of trees.
What I think the way that we put it is where possible, right, or where
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make sure
feasible.
that you got some.
Have some outs.
You have some outs for
Yeah.
those situations, because what's the balance? Do you really wanna go wipe out a bunch of trees?
No.
If that's the only place you can put it,
Mhm.
or does it make sense to put them in the side yard in that case?
Yep.
Yeah.
As long as you got somewhere.
But I mean, it sounds like that's all
Yeah,
addressed at a
I
later
just
date
remember
anyways.
that just to double check and make sure that's in there. I believe there's a clause that says wherever possible. Same thing with burying underground, wherever possible, if it's physically not possible, obviously. Trying to think of some other major changes that we made. You will see in here where the uplighting was not struck out. I have a note in there to make sure that that's taken out. I believe the desire was to make sure that people can still uplight their houses. That, we talked about that at the last meeting. There's still a provision in there for conservation development if they're in agricultural, rural, or suburban. Still following the same principles. I know the numbers look a little different, but as we were reading through it, I think the way we had it written before is we were giving them like additional increases beyond what we thought we were, which is why how it was written. But this would something would be if it be reduced by 80%, so it would be the total of that. If you do the math, it gets there before it didn't make a lot of sense if you do the math. So we fixed all of that, and it should now do what we thought. So the increases aren't so really tight lots. But it still remains like the same in principle. Oh, another change that we did add is before we, in the typology is all the same, we just added the village residential district to it. I'm trying to get to administration and chapters. A whole section was added, before I had noticed we forgot to add in the design review board chapter, so that's all in there now. Made some changes based on best practices to, talk about what that membership is made up of. I know now we have very strict requirements, we've loosened that a little bit, so we can just have members of the community that are interested in serving on the board. If council appoints them to there, they can. So the organization, instead of 7 members, moved to 5 members to mimic all the other boards. I think we might have an easier time keeping membership if we go down to 5 than we have on all the other boards. And then, this is zoning, board of zoning appeals, there we go. Design review board, again, talks about their powers, their duties, a certificate of appropriateness. They're only going to perform the same function they do now within the Uptown Historic District, which is called out on that map. Talks about appointment terms, approval criteria. We gave them an approval criteria, they didn't have one previously. And then design review criteria. This is also some points on which they should evaluate each property on. It's a little more defined than what we currently have, so hopefully there's a little more consistency when they're making reviews. So that was another, I guess, substantial change, or something that was added there and changed. Other than that, that was pretty much it, and that's the final chapter before you get to the glossary.
And then question on the DRB, just like you're doing for the subdivision regulations, are you going to do like that design standard?
So as part of this project, no.
Okay.
It's not really within the scope of work. It doesn't mean that later we couldn't adopt a formal design guideline document if we want to.
Okay.
I think right there, currently as we proposed it, it provides a little more clear guidelines than ever before. And there are standards written in the district chapters, like we now have residential design standards that apply to all residential districts, and then a specific one for the uptown.
Okay.
My goal was to run that by one of our steering committee members, Mr. Boyer, who is the architect on the design review board, just to double check and make sure that he feels like everything makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that provides them a little more design criteria than we currently have, but without a specific design manual.
Mm-hmm.
Always something we could adopt later if council finds it something that we need.
Okay.
One question, and I remember looking at it briefly, and I was just trying to read it here. Just on the building stuff, it's probably page 104, at least on the Dropbox one we got. Looking at the things like the arcade style and the gallery, I know the pictures, they both look the same and have the same descriptions. Is that accurate, or there should be a difference, or is there? I just remember looking at it, like I just didn't see much difference, but I figured there should be a little difference with the two designs.
I'll double check with the consultant to see what they were going for in that rendering.
I mean, the difference that I see is it looks like one is built out on top of that awning, whereas the other is truly just like an awning.
Right.
Okay, there we go.
There's the difference.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, to your point, from a description, they're basically the same.
Yeah.
So.
See, you saw that's that picture where you sit there and you look at it a billion times and you can't see a difference, then somebody
Well,
else
it
goes.
helped me the way she's flipping back and
Yeah.
forth, right? It's like something looks different. It's different.
I know, because I was hung up on like the A, B, and C, and I was looking there, just like, all right, what should I see differently? But yeah, I think that's the front where you said the awning and not an awning.
So the arcade supports the building structure. So
Okay.
like, and then the gallery is just kind of like the roof.
The roof, okay.
So it's almost like a porch for the
Yeah.
sidewalk. Whereas like the arcade is, there's a structure that's elevated above the walkway.
Perfect.
So it's similar concepts, but just slightly different.
It's like, thank you, like, seeing up here, we went back and forth, I could finally see the difference of the pictures scrolling quickly, so I got it, thank you.
Okay, the typologies too, they're illustrative, they're not regulatory, so they just provide, so if somebody were to look to do something like that, kind of what they would be, standardization considered. And we're not gonna make every building that if they do an arcade, it's gonna look like this, it must copy that image.
No, but I think it does a good job of giving like this, the spirit of what we're going for, right? Like, yeah, you might not be held to that from a code perspective, but it gives a good context, because there's been a ton of times where we've looked back at stuff that's in our existing code and we've gone, what were we trying to do here?
Right.
I'm gonna make a proposal for a shade for the next meeting. Working on my tan over here.
Yeah, other than that, any questions? I know we, have not gone thoroughly through the other aspects of the code. A lot of them, like the uses and general standards, are very similar to what we have in our current code. And we always have stuff for accessory structures, fences,
Yeah.
yards, landscaping, buffering, but you'll find those all in that section of the code.
I don't think I had any other callouts or concerns. I guess more from my understanding, what's next steps look like here, right? With the feedback we've gotten, like what would we expect?
So,
Timeline,
I
communications,
think
et
the
cetera.
next step is one more time informally in front of council. I think we were shooting for sometime in July, based on, and it sounds like we don't have a lot of comments to address here tonight, so it should be very easy to have something prepared for maybe for council. I'll discuss with Ms. Lupton how we handle that and proceed, in one meeting, and keep you guys posted. But I think that's probably our next bet, and then based on council's feedback, we'll decide if we're ready to move into petitioning for a public hearing, and then it'll come back to you guys first for that public hearing and make a recommendation.
Okay.
In the meantime, I just encourage you to use that live document. If you think of any comments, you have some time looking through it. You can always reach out to me with any specific questions, so we don't have to have a meeting for you to ask any questions. Please reach out. And then I'll keep you posted as we update subdivision regs. I just shoot you an email with it. It's like a 30-page document. So you can kind of get that in front of you informally, so it doesn't come as a surprise with what's in there. And go from there.
Perfect. Anyone have anything else?
No.
Adjourned?
Right?